Dear diarrhea, diarrhea full of shit. Just play along with me, myself, and I, and no one else. You know, I'm so legit. I'm a YouTuber, you know, so I have online family and friends who count on me for quality content. I do it for the fame. I do it for the glory. That's it. Hmm. Maybe someday I'll be famous. You know, you never know. But anyway, just a quick little update. Switching over to the loader position. Today was my first day, you know, messing around. You know, I was doing stuff that needed to be done, but basically I was just moving dirt. It wasn't a lot of finesse stuff. Moved, if my calculations are right, 450 tons. Probably a little less because I was moving topsoil and it was kind of compact and it's kind of hard to scoop that shit when it's loose. Or it's compact, so you kind of got to dig, and there's kind of a technique, you know, to get maximum bucketage. It's hard for me to explain, but you'll just have to take my word for it. And I tried kind of like, you know, raising the bucket up and kind of back dragging it, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying. Pull up onto the pile a little bit and then lower the bucket down on it so it's loose. But it takes about the same amount of time to do that as it does just to pull up to it and scoop. But I need to ask the main loader guy, you know, they're automatic transmissions, right? There's like at least one reverse gear, maybe two, and like four forward, and they just shift automatic. I do not know how the clutch system works. If it's, you know, liquid, you know, torque converter, or, well, it almost has to be. Otherwise, it'd be burning the clutch up. But I don't know. Sometimes things are kind of weird. Yeah, because I'm thinking what I would do is I would go up to the pile. He didn't scoop it. Well, anyway, so I have to kind of, you know, I'm putting my foot into it and kind of slowly. If it's loose dirt, then it's easy to scoop. You just, there you go, you got a full bucket. But if it's, and I'll still mess around, you know, maybe I can speed things up, you know, same technique, just a little faster. Easy on the gas, you know, enough so I got forward pressure with the machine, and then working the bucket not too fast so I can get in there and undercut that dirt and get it to fall into the bucket. And not hard enough where I spin the tires, and not hard enough even if I'm not spinning the tires, but back it off just a little bit more, just so I'm not, you know, running things. And the transmission temperature and the engine temperature were stayed in normal operating range. So, but I want to ask the dude, hey, is this normal? This is good. And after you're done running it, it's got a turbo. It's a diesel. Just let it idle for 2 to 3, 5 minutes. Let the oil circulate, you know, and cool the turbo down. What happens if you don't? I don't exactly know. I know you're supposed to let them cool down, but if you don't, I don't know what happens. Do things like warp? And do they start to leak oil? Do the little turbines, you know, bend and warp? You know, I don't know. Because it's kind of like a little jet engine, sort of, just with less turbines. But I ate, so, you know, you know, but what I would do is I'd pull, I'm moving one pile basically into another pile. So there's 2 piles, I'm turning it into one big pile. And it's perfect because it gives me some, you know, stick time, you know, to, you know, just learn the you know, motion of the machine. You know, get it down smooth and all that. So, I didn't have to pile it up as high as I did, but I chose to just because, whatever. Even though technically it's harder on the machine because it just is. You know, I'm wasting more diesel fuel. I'm revving the engine higher. Like I said, the clutch, whatever it is, liquid torque converter, you know, I'm running that at higher pressure. because what I would do is when I'm scooping, I would, it's basically first gear. And then to drive over, I'd back up and drive over to the other pile, and I'd start raising the bucket, as I was coming up to the pile. And then I'd get past about the halfway point, and then I'd pull up to the pile where my tires were even and then gas it. So I'd pull them, drive up onto the pile. Not like super high, but my front tires were probably 4 or 5 feet in the air. And then stop, because they have a gas on the right side, a brake on the right side, and a brake on the left side, and the brakes are connected. And they do that on purpose. That way you don't have any lag time. You can just gas, brake. You can do that for something like that, of which I speak, as well as when you're loading a truck. You kind of got to pull up. I've never loaded a truck, but I've been loaded by a bunch of front-end loaders in my day, and I've seen it done. But, you kind of pull up, dump, and then you kind of got to, let off. It's in gear, right? So when you let off the gas, it should. Yeah, so it's definitely a liquid torque converter. Never said I was a mechanic. Stupid. But, and then you roll forward a little bit and then dump more and then hit the brake. So that's why you need that. Otherwise, you'd be, bumping trailers all the time. Anyway, so when I did that, it would kind of, it'd be like in first gear, and then I'm not sure if it was some sort of lock mechanism or if it was grabbing second gear or what, because I'd pull up to the pile and kind of, and then I'd give it some more gas, and then it would like boom, and it'd kind of go into something happened. It either grabbed second or some sort of locking mechanism realized that I was at high RPMs but wasn't going very fast. So I'll have to ask the dude. That's not his name. He's just the main loader guy. Because I don't want to tear the shit out of the equipment. He didn't say anything, but he's that type of guy who wouldn't say anything. But I'm the type of guy who wants to make sure I'm doing everything right. So I'll bring it up. And those are good questions. Those aren't stupid questions that are like shit, And I did just fine, took to it, like I said, just give me a little bit more time. I'm not just going to be loading shit, though. I'm going to be, doing stuff that kind of has more finesse. So today was just, scoop, dump, wash, rinse, repeat, a shit ton of times. But that's good. I'm kind of learning this stuff from the ground up, Started as a laborer dude, and I'm sure he'll train me to do that other job so I can fill in for him. And then I'll give it some time because I don't want to like encroach on the other guy's job, but that's like a more interesting job in my opinion because you get orders and then you got a place to make the mix and and stockpiling, and it's just more than what I'm going to be doing now because I'm going to be running, and nobody cares about this shit. I'm just talking. I'm going to be running, constantly feeding, a crusher, basically. And then once it spits the material out, then I'm going to take it over and stockpile it. And it sounds like it's going to be a full-time job. So kind of what I'm hoping, and I'm just thinking out loud here, me, myself, and is I think it would be nice to be able to do every job. So I'll be able to I'll be loading trucks eventually. And then I'll be, feeding the plant, that makes see, they have 2 sites, right? And the one site makes like more mixes, but they're simpler mixes. The site that I'm at now makes less material, but they're more complex. There's more like ingredients, right? So it's a little bit more slower going. Because, man, we used to just crank it out, at the other, and the one machine's been down, and turns out July is like the slow season, for what we do. But yeah, we would just crank out these big ass fucking piles, and they just don't seem to do that at this other site. But anyway, and then my plan is to, maybe have a week. And I think the boss actually said that kind of in the beginning. He's like, you guys can take turns, you over here and blah, blah. I think that's a good idea. That way we're both proficient and reading the tablet, because we get like orders. I won't be reading any tablet. I'm just going to be, doing my job. And I got to pay attention and, watch and listen to the machine and make sure it's working right and all that stuff. And they'll get me trained up. So I'm not just a complete monkey, holding a steering wheel. Only this time I'm holding a steering wheel and I have 2 levers to push, forwards and backwards. So, and it used to be I was a monkey holding the steering wheel and I had to shift gears. But these days, the trucks are all going to automatic. So, the last like 2 or 3 years of my illustrious truck driving career, I was in an automatic. It was 12-speed, but anyway, and I'll be honest with you, the honeymoon's over, especially in traffic. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all. But anyway, and these cabs and these loaders, they have air conditioning and a radio. I probably won't be listening to the radio, at least not at first till I'm comfortable. But anyway, so yeah, reading the orders and, okay, this is what we need to make for, because I was on the ground, so I would keep track of that stuff. Every day I'd ask the loader guy, what do we got to make today? How many tons of this, how many tons of that, just so I knew. And I would keep track as well as he would sometimes. And they have scales, plus each bucket is roughly 5 to 6 tons. It's not a huge loader, but it's like a regular loader you'd see on a construction site. But there's other loaders that they got running around there on that other site that are like, they belong in a mine. They're big ass. They got them big teeth on the bucket and all that shit. And I have to tell this epic story real quick. When I first started driving, I was hauling aggregate to an asphalt plant, but occasionally I'd haul asphalt. I worked for a bunch of different asphalt companies. And, sometimes you were hauling the sand and the gravel, sometimes you were hauling the asphalt, blah, blah, blah. The tandems were pretty much always going to the job sites, but, I was driving a tractor trailer, so sometimes if it was a big job site, then they'd have the trucks. It just depends. But the guy pulled up on me with that big, huge loader, that you could fit, a car in the bucket. And he's, honked the horn, and he's, motioned me to, step up to the little balcony, that they got around the cab. And he's like, "You want to run this?" And I thought he meant like, what, just for fun? But he was, they needed an operator, so he was trying to poach me and snag me out of a driving position and get me in the loader. Because they had like day and night shift, so. And I would have been the new guy, so I would have been night shift. But yeah, and I'm all, nah, fucking idiot. Should have said yeah. Would have been, paralleling that shit, run the loader for like a year and then say, hey, I don't know, put me back in a truck or switch jobs or who knows, because if you have your CDL, you have it in your back pocket. I lost mine, but I'm going to get it back. Now, I'll still be limited to companies who are willing to hire me, because some companies won't touch you. Like if I wanted to haul, munitions or fuel, I probably could never get a job doing that. The company that I was working for, they'll hire me back, but not for 10 years as a driver. So they're pretty serious, I mean, 10 years, shit. Is the Earth even still going to be here in 10 years? And most companies, the ones who will hire you, 2, 3 years, whatever. Okay, you've been punished, whatever. You've been doing other work, whatever, we'll hire you. But again, it's the insurance that makes the decisions. So it's probably companies that are kind of on the lower end of things as far as pay and stuff goes. Although, two things. Like I said, this company runs trucks. Who knows what the future holds? Will I want to get in a truck? Does the pay, is it more? What's the schedule? Because I'm not hurting for money. I kind of like this working, 9 hours. Well, 7, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12. So yeah, 8 hours with a lunch. Takes me 25 minutes to get to work. I'm kind of digging this fucking shit. Maybe I don't want to get back in a truck, and work 12, 13 motherfucking hours a day, 14 fucking hours a day. Then I have to drive home, eat, shower, maybe watch a little TV, wash, rinse, repeat. We good, motherfucker. So, but, and my last company, well, the company before my last company, the one where I hauled, over the road, mostly produce. I just keep the same trailer pretty much for the 3 weeks that I was out. And mostly produce, occasionally dry, freight, Procter & Gamble, soap, shit like that. Procter & Gamble was either a heavy load or a light load. It was either paper towels and shit like that, or it was, soap and shit like that. But they were self-insured, and I worked there for 10 years, and I was, like one of their, I don't know if I was one of their better drivers as far as mileage goes, but I never complained. I kept my nose clean, this, that, and the other. Anyway, like the one dude, he's all blah, 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 wish we had 100 more just like you, and he wouldn't say that unless he meant it, If you didn't mean it, just don't say it. As well as actually in the beginning, I was slouching off, and I would fuck up, and I got a few tickets, going through the scales and whatnot. And I was actually on strike 3. It was like year 2, and I was like, shit, man, I'm going to lose this fucking job. So the rules said that, I was supposed to be fired, but instead my punishment was I had to work in the office for like 2 weeks. So, audit logs and shit like that. So that's saying something. I mean, they could just cut me loose. Maybe they were hurting for drivers really, really bad, but they ran like 250 trucks. But anyway, whenever I would see a driver, in one of those trucks, I'd, if I got a chance to talk to him, say, hey, such and such still work there? Tell him such and such said, hey. So, and some of them probably didn't, but some of them probably did, So it's like I was kind of keeping that shit going, And when I left, it was bittersweet. And the guy said, the safety guy, he's all, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll welcome you back with open arms. This was before the DUI, of course. But, they started out as kind of an outlaw company. Husband and wife run it. I suspect that if shit hit the fan and I really wanted to, I could probably get on with them. Go back to them, so. It's kind of funny, I had to pull a fast one because I didn't want to let them know I was quitting, so I had to go through all this process and set everything up for my background check and all that stuff, while on the road, because they get so many drivers, and the only way to apply is online, so, did that kind of here and there, at truck stops and whatnot. And then finally, it said, you could get a call from them, within a week or within, 6 months, and I got a call within a week, and, picked a week for onboarding. So it was 5 days, and I would stay out for 3 weeks and go home for 4 days. So I stayed out for 4 weeks. But I was under the understanding that I could only take 4 days off max. I guess that's not actually. They must have changed that on me and didn't tell me. But anyway, I was, doing the onboarding thing. And as far as my company was concerned, I was just on my home time. And I was supposed to go out on a Friday, and I called him and I had to tell a little white lie and say, I called him on a Thursday and said, I'm supposed to go out tomorrow, but something came up, blah, 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 and it was no problem. It was just my dispatcher. And everything was cool. Then on Friday, I called him and said, oh, by the way, I feel kind of like a jerk, but, been wanting to come off the road, and, well, I just got hired on with this company. I've been doing the onboarding thing for the last 5 days. But the safety guy was totally cool about it. He's like, well, so, because they don't hire just anybody, I guess. I mean, they've lowered their standards, but some people actually didn't make it because they had to, they tested you on stuff and whatnot. And I do have to toot my own horn here real quick. The one guy said, I asked something, and he said, well, I can't tell you how you're tracking, but keep doing what you're doing because it's been a while since we had somebody do as well as you did, do as well as you're doing across the board. So, and that might sound pathetic, but it is a feather in my cap. For lack of a better word, I am kind of proud of that because I think he meant it. I mean, who gives a fuck, right? Truck driving, wow, big fucking deal. You can drive, smooth and shift smooth and take your corners and back shit. And they had some weird shit set up, where it wasn't just backing up, but we had to like snake it around and back it at 90 degrees. And, it wasn't rocket science, but some people failed and they put them trailers right next to each other, And if you hit that trailer, you had, man, I think they may have gave you 3 shots. Maybe it was 2. But believe it or not, there were people, who were drivers, for like, 10, 20 years who didn't make it. They didn't make tryouts. They didn't make the team, quote unquote. And here's this dude, saying, I can't tell you how you're doing, but keep doing what you're doing because it's been a while since we had a super trucker motherfucker like you come through here. Shit. It's pitiful. Anyway. Yeah. So hopefully, and I have a feeling I will, take to this job everything, not just the loader, but just like everything, caring, giving a damn, like I still stop at 3 o'clock and I shovel. Because those dudes are usually doing other shit, So I'm like the low guy on the totem pole, and that's how I like to do, just the quiet, keep my head down, don't complain, humble, Oh, it's 3 o'clock. I'm getting out of the loader. I'll grease it, do my inspection. Then I'll shovel sand, and stuff, whatever, and learning to, kind of work on the machines a little bit. I mean, they have like a main mechanic guy, but my point is, it's a simple job, but that stuff, that equipment is expensive. And if you're, careless, I mean, a simple bearing costs like thousands of dollars, like $3,000. It's fucking ridiculous. So if you're starting to notice something or hear something or notice something's off, it from the outside it comes off as kind of like a dumb person's job, Oh, you work in a fucking, sand pit, Anybody could do that. No. I mean, yes, they could if they cared, but that's the thing, is finding people who care. So, I know, I'm talking myself down. Gonna be the best damn loader operator in the world. Yeah, well, whatever. And I definitely won't be, because because I don't have the discipline to, you know, work that hard. But what do you mean discipline? Oh shit, whatever. It's hard for me to explain. So whatever. Well, it's like I said, you know, piling up that dirt higher. I was doing that just sort of get comfortable with the loader, you know, but I didn't really need to be. And technically, I'm probably being harder and wasting more fuel on the loader. You know, I'm actually running it harder. So I'll run that past the dude, and I'll tell him that. I'll say, you know, look, I know I didn't need to be stacked that high, but you know, whatever, you know. So anyway, 26 minutes. So just been sitting here talking about my bright future. So bright, gotta wear shades. Katie Boo, you ready to make that leap of faith? Abandon all your well, maybe not family, some family at least. I don't know what your deal is, but friends. I forget what it said, what Fatty McFatfuck had said. You have friends who love and care for you, or did she say family and friends? You haven't ceased her. So, but anyway, you ready to abandon all that? Move here to the great state of Colorado? You like the Rocky Mountains? Ooh, I think you will. We'll go camping and shit. Like real camping, the sound of the wind blowing in the pine trees and crows and woodpeckers and yeah. That's a bird, by the way. Dumbass. I mean, if I wasn't a troll, did that sort of shit, and this wasn't complete and utter fucking bullshit. I'm going to watch your video now. I'm 30 seconds in. Please keep your comments. What'd you say? What? I don't remember. Are people giving you shit? Or the person you're ASMRing up shit? Anyway. Fuck your fans.